Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Best Last Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. I am Jesse Jackson. Joining me in the CNC is Lou.
Hello, everyone.
And the podcast mom, Karen.
Hello. And Chuck is making a cameo.
Yes, we have Chuck visiting with us as well. You may hear, though I can't hear him in the background.
He might meow.
Yes.
Anyway, it's my cat, and he has decided to come in and get high.
Yes.
On some cat.
I get high with a little help from my friend.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes. I think it's good Chuck's here since it's a very light, just not much significant episode. We are talking Season 2, Episode 20, The Long Twilight Struggle. Originally aired October 18th, 1995. The Centauri war machine rolls on toward the Narn homeworld, unknowingly aided by the shadows, while the remains of the Narn fleet plan a last-ditch counter-attack. As the Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5 said, this is a significant episode. Stop if you have not watched this and you don't want to be spoiled. Lou, I'm going to start with you this time. Quick thoughts.
Another shocker of an episode. I did not think that the Narn Centauri conflict would be resolved so early into the show. I really thought this would go at least another season or something like that. So I was quite surprised at this episode, and it just further cements or makes it difficult to reconcile your feelings for Londo and Jakar and try to get back to where we were at the start of the series as to where we are now. It's been quite a evolution.
Yeah.
Karen.
I don't think it's finished by a long shot, but I do think that this is a pretty quick, at least, resolution for what was going on with Londo and the Narn homeworld. It's cool to see it. I'm not happy about what happened, but it's cool to see it in this new stage because I think we're going to get much more complicated interactions. And I very much enjoyed Andreas Katsoulis's performance in this episode. He was very good.
Abso-fraggin-lutely. Darn
Yes.
it. Damn it. Yeah, this is a humdinger of an episode. As I've mentioned before, I think when people talk about how much better the second season is than the first, I think they tend to think of these, like last week was a pretty big episode where we got the reveal. We got confirmed that Susan was a latent telepath. We got Talia being exposed as this mind agent. And now then we do get an end of the war. And I will agree with you, Lou. It has been a couple of years since I watched the show. And I went, really? That's right. This did end very quickly. Let's start with you, Lou. Let's begin with the great, the actor who plays the Jakar's uncle is he's a great character actor. And I'm looking at William Morgan Shepherd, who his son, everyone knows because he has been in everything. And why am I drawing a blank on his name?
I know his last name.
Yeah.
Shepherd. Yeah, he's in all sorts of science fiction stuff.
Yeah. Why am I drawing a blank on Mark Shepherd?
Mark Shepherd. It came into my head the minute you saw it. Yeah. And you might know him from...
I didn't know that.
From Firefly or a million other things.
Supernatural.
Firefly.
Yeah.
Supernatural. He played, yes. He is Leverage. He has been Medium. He has been in everything.
Chuck.
Chuck.
And it's a very... The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
William Morgan Shepherd was in a lot of different things. His voice was amazing, and he did voice acting a lot. And I think I remember him from The Next Generation, where he and Data had quite the connection.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, father and son, played the same character in Lou's favorite show, Doctor Who, where they played, Mark Sheppard played a young FBI agent, Secret Service agent set during the 60s. And then they moved to the future. His father played that character as an older man. So yeah, very well done. We start out with the war is going badly for the Narn. They do not think they can last long. And so they think if they throw all their chips onto the table and go all in on one specific battle, destroy a supply line, that they think it might get the Centauri to go, oh, wait, maybe there's too much cost in this, and they're going to go all in. Jakar mentions, oh, but what about the homeworld? There'll be no one to watch the homeworld. And they're going, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to be fine, which you immediately red flag, correct? Mm-hmm. Oh, what are they thinking? And at the same time, well, no, let's just talk about that for a while. And yeah, I guess we should go ahead because they're combined. The Centauri, Londo is pulled to the homeworld. Rifa, with the world's wildest eyebrows, says, hey, we're going to, in one move, using the same logic that Truman did with dropping a nuclear bomb, we're going to destroy the Narn homeworld. This will put them, they will be forced to surrender, and this will save millions of Centauri lives. So we have two massive plays by this war, and we see how it plays out. So, Lou, I'm going to start with you again. Talk to me wherever you want to go on these two topics.
Yeah, before we get into the episode, can I mention that William Morgan Sheppard was in the running to play Jakar as well, which I find interesting.
Ooh, he would have been a good Jakar. Yeah. I love Andrea, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool to know. Yeah, a shocking turn of events for me in this episode. As I said off the top, I didn't expect this conflict to end so soon into the series. And this episode is really bolstered by good casting for the guest stars. John Shook, who we haven't even mentioned yet, plays Drawl. I'm going to age myself here, but I remember John Shook mostly from Macmillan and Wife with Rock Hudson and Susan St. James. So he's another great character actor. But just jumping into this whole setup, these parallel paths with Jakar and Lando, they both have skin in the game in that we know, like, Lando's running deal with the shadows, plus he's just lost a friend in the previous episode with the knives episode, and because his friend was being ostracized by the new regime that Reef was putting together. So that's all. We already have the emotional investment into that, and we're already invested with Jakar as well, because we're seeing that his people have been so many times. They're like the refugees of, you pick any country that has had to suffer through that scenario, and then they add the extra layer of having his is it his uncle or
his uncle.
Yeah, his uncle Gaston is leading this war, this desperate last mission to try to turn the tide of the war again in the Narn's favor. And it's made all the more poignant because, like you said, Jesse, the red flag about you're going to leave your home world undefended is just because we know what Londo can bring to the table in terms of the primary or the feint, as FEIENT, battle, the distraction, and that the rest of the Centauri fleet is going to go to the Narn homeworld. So it's just, you're just filled with dread right off from the opening scenes of this episode, and it unfortunately plays out the way that we thought it would, and it's just tough to watch. And we can parallel it to many other scenarios that we've seen in real world. Of course, the ongoing conflict with Russia and geez, I'm drawing a blank on
Ukraine.
Geez, that's bad.
It's okay.
Russia and Ukraine is also makes this episode even more poignant, especially from the bombardment aspect of it. And we've seen this scenario played out so many times in the world, and it's just tough to watch because it's always the innocents that get collateral damage. So yeah, I found this particular setup very poignant and just really tough to watch. And I just thought Jakar, he was just amazing in this episode.
Yeah, that speech at the end is just, it's so breathtaking. Karen, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is another thing I talked to my husband about, where we could be a little more open about things, where I talked about how Londo was this character that we just loved in the first season, and it's turned into this just dread of seeing him on the screen because we know something uncomfortable is going to happen. And he was at his most hateful in this episode, which I was sad to see. The way he addressed the council and was very imperious and just really wanting Jakar to go down. And I speculated that maybe some of that is that he was trying to stop his death scenario from happening, because in that he sees that Jakar and he kill each other. And so maybe he's trying to forestall that. But still, it was really terrible. And I also enjoyed seeing the fact that while he was a little reluctant for things to happen, he allowed it to happen. And then afterwards, once he got confirmation from Rifa, this is as far as we're going, right? Rifa knows, you knew for sure with that comment that Rifa wasn't going to let it go. And now they've started to attack other colonies. And Londo realizes he's gotten in over his head. And so one of the things that Sean and I discussed, and I'm sorry to bring this up because we're supposed to be talking, the three of us, but I'm bringing up stuff that maybe we can discuss as well, was that the shadows are just using Londo. They don't give a crap whether this war goes in favor of the Narn or the Centauri, as long as one of them is shut down so that they become a little weaker and weaker, and they can maybe consolidate everybody to take over. They're going to jump in and be the predators. Londo has a lot of things to worry about here. He is the architect of this, as Rifa said, and who could you hate Rifa anymore? If Londo is the bad guy, then Rifa is the bad guy's bad guy. Rifa is the emperor to Londo's Darth Vader. And he's not that cool. I thought the emperor was cool, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And you just had to know that when they had that conversation, you could see a little bit of the old Londo, but he's not letting that part of him win. He's going along with everything. And now he's seeing, okay, they're not going to, people back on the homeworld are not going to listen to me. They're not going to just end it here. We've got to get what they consider their territory back, which is the Narn homeworld and all that. They look down on it. And I think a lot of it was payback because they conquered the Narn, then the Narn came back and won in their next conflict, and they're trying to get back at them. We can't let people know that we're weak. We have to suppress them again. But I do think that the shadows are playing a long game of chess. And so while I think this might be a finishing move on the part of the Centauri, what we think might be a finishing move, it's definitely not. They're planning on bigger things. And in turn, the shadows are planning on way bigger things. One of the things I said to my husband as well was, why do villains always want to watch the world burn? It's not in their best interest, to be honest. I think the Centauri, and again, I'm speaking as if they believe they're not the villain, that Londo feels like he's doing the right thing. He just wants to suppress the Narn, and that's it. That would be the way to go if you're a villain. Suppress the Narn, take them as slaves, you get what you want out of it. But in this case, I think the shadows are playing this long game where they just want to take over everything. But what does that get them? Are they just going to destroy the whole universe? And honestly, that's shooting them their own selves in the foot. Because what else do they have after all that happens? And that's something that I've thought about over and over again when I read something or watch something. What is the motivation? Why do they want to see this chaos and discord? And I'd like to know that in this case. A lot of times we do get an answer for that, but a lot of times it just doesn't make sense to me. What is their big goal? Is it are they just plain evil and they want to see everything destroyed and them being the last people standing, or what? Is there some kind of threat? And where are they working towards? Are they working towards the Minbari, who we know are very advanced? Are they working towards humans who aren't that advanced, but they might have something that the shadow people want? I want to know what their long game is. What is their ultimate goal here? Because it's definitely not to conquer the Narn. They have something serious in mind further down the road. And geez, I know we're going to get more Rifa. I know we are. But man, every time he comes on the screen, I just want to turn it off because I can't stand him. But I know it's going to mean some kind of conflict. But man, he is the slimiest of slimes.
And those eyebrows are out of control. You talk about, I keep looking at him because I always think of Luce talk about the hair. And this just, craziness.
Yeah, his eyebrows match his hair, right?
Yeah. And this arrogance, right? Oh, the emperor is out there. And then he sits in the throne. I don't know if either one of you are watching the show Ark that's on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I'm not.
I won't say it's great, but it's pretty good. But there is a premise. The premise is that there is an ark coming from Earth is dying, and there's an accident, and all the officers end up dying, and there's only 3 actual officers that are all lieutenants on the ship that would crew. So everyone else is dead, and you're left with all these civilians. And there's a scene where someone goes to sit in the captain's chair, and they go, "No one has sat in that chair since the accident, because that's the captain's chair and none of us are captains." And that's the emperor's chair. You don't sit, if you're in the White House, you don't go behind the desk. "Excuse me, Mr. President, just let me type up a quick note here." No. So yeah, but he's this arrogance. I do think, I want both of you to give me your thoughts, and we'll start with you, Karen. I think Londo, that great scene of him looking out the window and seeing them just bombarding, right? Every civilized nation world has banned these weapons. So you figure they're combination chemical, nuclear, just they are bad stuff. And they're watching them just destroy the planet. And I think that was a big movement, because then Londo seemed to be having that council, no compassion whatsoever. He was this request denied. He just is just this confidence, this arrogance. It's almost like he turned off his emotion because he can't acknowledge how, and I realize this is inhumane, he has come. When I realize he's not a human, but in that term. So Karen, thoughts on that scene, and then at the end with the council?
Yeah, again, I hate Rifa so much. I hate him. And he's not just arrogant, which he is, very arrogant, self-important. He's also really, and I said it before, slimy. He knows that this is all down to what Londo has done with his associates, and I'm putting air quotes in that, which are the shadow. And I'm assuming he's not letting people in on who they are. He's just saying, I'll get my associates to do something. So Rifa doesn't know that it might be sinister, and he doesn't care. I think part of his deal is that he thinks Londo is below him, beneath him. And he'll use, I feel like it's an allegory for what's going on with the shadows. He'll use Londo for whatever, and he's not going to let him in on what's going to happen because he just doesn't care. And the same with the shadows are going to use the Centauri as a race to do whatever they want to do. And I really want to see Rifa have his comeuppance. I know it won't happen for a while because I know the actor's in quite a few episodes. But man, do I want to see something horrible happen to him. And there were a lot of scenes in this episode where Londo showed his emotions. And while Andreas Katsoulis was incredible in this, I also think that Peter Jurasik was good in this, where he had to be much more micro. He couldn't be quite as emotive. He had to keep things under wraps. And at least in the first part of the episode, where he didn't want to let on who his associates were, he didn't want to give too much away to Rifa, and he wanted to be cautious. And I don't think he wanted to be on that ship to watch what was going on. I think there was a lot of sadness there, but he realized he had already gotten himself into this situation and he had to see it through, and hoping that something better was going to come out of it. But he still does have that. He has to have a disdain for the Narn. He has to have that feeling that the Narn are beneath him. So we have this kind of echo of, he thinks the Narn are beneath him. Rifa thinks Londo is beneath him. And the Shadows think everyone is beneath them. So we have this kind of ramping up effect in this episode. And we really got a clear picture of what was going on in Londo's head. And the fact that we have just seen a complete turn in his character from the easygoing, kind of clowny clown, happy-go-lucky Roman emperor character to this very sinister, angry, unfeeling character, where he literally was telling people that the Narn and Jakar were slaves. They were to be executed if they didn't want to be slaves. And I don't care what you think. And I really don't think he understands the ramifications of what he's done from the people around him on Babylon 5. I think they have blinders on to what people are going to think. And I don't think he thinks that Sheridan has the balls to go up against him. And I thought it was very cool that Sheridan and Jakar had their conversations together, that we see that Jakar is Ukraine, definitely, that Sheridan's going to stand up and give him whatever resources he needs to get back into the swing of things. And I liked all of that, like all of the acting in the entire episode. But of course, Jakar, most of all, was stoic, and you could see the sadness. You could also see the sadness on Londo's face, but that's more unsympathetic sadness. Whereas Jakar was proud, he didn't like seeking sanctuary, but he did because it was for the better of his people. They needed someone there on Babylon 5, and to be that Earth and whatever other people he could get on his side. They needed that interaction. And there was a lot of stuff packed into this episode. They do a really good job of packing a lot of things in the name of subtext and facial expressions and the timbre of their voice and things like that. It's just, this was, again, another masterful episode that featured both Londo and Jakar, which proves just their range in acting.
Yeah, I'm going to get you to give your thoughts, Lou, but I did want to share one thing that JMS talked about in he had, for a limited time, he sold online books of the scripts so you could read the scripts, and he did an introduction before each episode he wrote. And he talked about that no matter how busy he was, when he knew that Londo and Jakar were going to have scenes together, he was on set watching him because he loved watching them. And they actually thought, does he not like what we're doing? Why is he watching us? And he had to explain to them, no, I just find it a treat. You guys are just perfect. These two do make each other better. The relationship between these characters is a fascinating journey. And to see, we talk about this a lot, Londo the fool and Jakar the villain, And in 2 years later, Londo is the villain and Jakar, not the fool, he's the victim. And we're feeling there is just a beautiful journey they've taken us on. Lou, what's your thoughts?
I think Karen really hit all the high points. So
Yeah.
I can't add a lot more to it, except that I really did appreciate the fact that they made Londo watch the bombardment of the planet with the mass drivers. It reminded me of the scene from the excellent Green Mile movie where Percy Wetmore is forced to watch the execution of Edouard Delacroix because he didn't wet the sponge that they put on his head when he was being electrocuted. So
Yeah.
I like that because most of the time, higher ups in a war, it's a virtual exercise for them in most respects. They're usually shielded from the actual carnage that they've inflicted. So I do like that Londo had to have that punishment. How it will torture him going forward, it will be interesting to see. Whether it will haunt his dreams, it will also be interesting to see. And the power of the scenes where the two of them come together in the council chambers, just knowing how passionate both of them are and how these circumstances are forcing them to keep a lid on their inner turmoil is just really it's just a masterclass to watch the acting of these two characters. And it's also a nice rallying point for the remaining members of the council to come to the Narn's defense as much as they can. It's frustrating to see the Minbari and the Earth delegations sitting on the sidelines during this whole conflict. They offered aid, but it's at a hands-off type of arrangement, and it's painful that they did not get more directly involved in the conflict. And maybe that's just me being naive because I don't see within the Babylon 5 universe what the downside would have been for them to get involved. And because they don't have a prime directive, or they've never talked about a prime directive that I'm aware of, it's just bothersome to me that they wouldn't have gotten involved more on the active side, I guess you could say. Instead of being passive, I would have liked to seen them take a more active role in the conflict. So there's all of that. And yeah, it's just really going to be interesting now to see the new dynamics of not just between Londo and Jakar, because Jakar's no longer on the council, but he's still on the station. Yeah, and we still have the other thread that we have to talk about, and how that ends with Sheridan and Garibaldi and the Lynn and the Rangers and all that stuff. So there's a whole new dynamic now that's been set into motion with this episode. So going forward, the political, strategical, military importance of Babylon 5 is just jumped up leagues from where it was even before. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out going forward. And yeah, I'm just pretty blown away by this episode. I'm not going to hide my cards on the table. This is easily a 10 out of 10 episode for me. So I can't. It's been frustrating because we don't want to get ahead of ourselves when we're recording. So it's been like 2 weeks before I could put the next episode in, and I'm just really chomping at the bit to get to that next episode to see how things play out. I imagine it'll actually probably be a step down because you can't stay at a constant 11, Spinal Tap 11 with these episodes. You do have to have peaks and valleys. But yeah, it's going to be cool to see how much subterfuge and espionage is going to be going forward.
So listeners, if you're a veteran, mark this spot, and then let's talk to both of them next week about Lou's statement.
Okay. No, I'm really chopping.
Because as I talked about, I was just listening to this podcast. The amount of people in the US in 1940 that were, we don't care what's happening in Germany. This is America. We don't care about America. We only care about America. There's nothing. From my perspective, I think that's what's happening in Earth. Earth is going, no, we should not be involved with other nations or other worlds. This is just, we should be our own. And you're right. It is, you would think that the Earth, let's use United States, this is a chance you could help someone. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And the reality is they don't want to. For whatever reason, they're thinking, no, this is Earth for Earth, Earth first. And that is where Home Guard and everything else, the Ministry of Peace and all this is coming through. So I think that explains why. Yeah. And I know that's why Sheridan is feeling frustrated. And I think also Delenn is feeling frustrated. And who knows what the hell Kosh is feeling.
But it's naive of me to want to be more active, because I realize that in reality that the way it's played out in the show is how it probably would have played out in real life in a similar conflict. But it's just, it's a show. So you're hoping that they would.
It does. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
But
I think the three of us are of the same mind when it comes to politics and current events, where we want to be the good guy and we know where that moral compass is. And so part of us, we equate that to Earth on this show and want them to be more involved. But I know that Babylon 5 is a microcosm. It's a contained area, and Earth doesn't have a lot. They don't see Centauri and Narn from where they are, and they got a lot of shit going on, pardon my French. And I just don't think it even penetrates that they could help out. I think on Babylon 5, they do, because they see the ambassadors, they see the conflict firsthand.
They see the refugees.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what we see as well. And so we want to project that onto them. Please help out. And I think we were vindicated there with Bruce talking to Andreas there at the end and saying that I'll give you whatever resources. And then, and again, I think this chains on where he says that, and then right afterwards, he is given this whole band of people to be behind him. And I think this episode in particular, it was very sequential. It ramped up. It gave great performances all the way through, and just a fantastic. I'll show my cards too. I think it's a 10 as well. We'll get to that in a minute. But.
Yeah, I think part of my frustration, sorry, Jesse, is that because we have that other storyline that we haven't touched yet, but Londo's got the shadows, but it seems to me that Sheridan's got the planet. So doesn't use it. And I realize the events of moving really fast and he hasn't had time to process exactly, and he doesn't know the capabilities, but there's not even any exploration of bringing that into play. It's like they're just saving it for the big oncoming conflict that with the shadow people, and maybe they don't. It was a little frustrating. That's, I guess, the baseline of what I'm coming from.
No, I think that's a valid criticism. I'll quote this: "No dictator, no invader can hold an imprisoned population by force of arms forever. There is no greater power in the universe than the need for freedom. Against that power, tyrants and dictators cannot stand. The Centauri learned that lesson once. We will teach it to them again. Though it takes 1,000 years, we will be free." At the George Bush Library, there was a Nelson Mandela exhibit, which rings very true with South Africa. All right, so let's move to the other storyline that did have a little humor.
I got some goosebumps when you read that. I did.
Thank you. Yeah. We have a cast change. Louis Tenorni, who played Draw, was unable, so they hired John Schuck to replace. They explained that the machine had de-aged him to make him look younger. And we've got a ghost in the machine, literally, where he shows up and he tells Delenn, senses him and says, "Hello, old friend." He shows up and says, "Hey, Captain," right out of the shower. I think you should come down and see me when it's convenient. And I think it's convenient for you right now. So we get this whole storyline. We get a Shout out to Charles's favorite character, Zathras, and the big reveal that the Rangers exist, that there is a army of light that is going to be able to use to help them. Lou, let's start with this storyline. Let's talk a little bit about this.
I was, again, almost, I'm not going to say shocked, but knocked off kilter by the fact that Kosh was part of this group, because he's been so hands-off in everything else that's been going on before. So that out of everything that happened in that storyline leading up to that final scene with the Rangers, that one threw me off the most. And I think that we also had another episode where Delenn and Kosh came up to Sheridan, and it's the Minbari know more about Kosh than anybody else does as well. So there's that dynamic going on that still throws me off balance as to why they're playing that so close to keeping the card so close to the vest on the Kosh storyline. But overall, I just enjoyed the thread from the perspective that John Schuck, I thought, did a great job, and he added some much needed humor. This whole thread added some nice humor to balance the overall dread of the and Sturm and Drang of the other thread storyline with the war going on in that. So it was a good balance, and I think they should make the right decision to do it in this storyline and not do it in the other one, because yes, I know that there's gallows humor in that, but because they were moving through such a large scale conflict, I just think it would have been inappropriate for personal moments of levity, whereas in this other thread that it would play much better, and it did. So it'll be interesting to see. We don't know what exactly the planet can do for them, but it would have been nice to have seen it maybe tested out in this episode. But I'm sure JMS has his reasons, and maybe it's just to make us feel that even though our characters didn't do what we wanted them to do in this particular conflict, that they will step forward for the bigger one that's coming up for the rest of the series. You're muted, Jesse.
Karen?
Okay. That's all you said was Karen?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I want to talk about John Schuck real quick. You mentioned McMillan and Wife, and yes, 100% yes, I remember him from that. And here's something that occurs to me is that we are so removed from the current generations, and that the things we remember character actors from are so different. Right now, it would be stuff like ER and Grey's Anatomy and things like that, things that are on currently and their character actors placed in different things. But for me, it's stuff like the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Love American Style and The Love Boat. And some of these shows, the younger people haven't even seen. It's not even in their wheelhouse. And John Schuck was in so many of those things.
Didn't he have a short-lived series too, where he was like a robot and he was a partner with a cop?
Oh man, he could have. I don't know.
Yeah. I can't remember the name.
I think so. Yeah. And
that kind of
he
strikes
was a Klingon. He was a
right.
Klingon.
Yes. He was in a lot of the Star Trek stuff. And a tiny bit of trivia about him that is pretty significant. He is the first actor to ever say the F word in a movie.
Really?
Yes, he played Painless in MASH, in the movie MASH. Oh, and he said the F word in that, and that was the first time in 1970 that it was ever said in a movie.
Wow.
He has a distinct place in history in the performing arts. He's also a stage actor. He's a voice actor, television, movies, everything. He's very well-rounded. And I love that they used him in this kind of humorous yet a little heavy role. Yeah. And that I'm assuming we'll see him again in this, which is pleasant. I always like seeing actors like John Schuck come up. He's been talented in everything I've seen him in, which is quite a lot of things. He did voices for Civilization as well, which is a video game that I was addicted to for quite some time. But yeah, I think he's great, and what a wonderful choice. It makes sense that the machine would revert him to a previous state in order to keep him able to perform duties, to have his brain back where it was in the past, and his body is virile and all that. I also loved when he went to see Sheridan and he's talking to him and, oh, you need to come. Do you need to put clothes on? Just as a little side note, I can wait if you want. No, I'm fine. Okay, really? Do you want to put clothes? And I'm thinking to myself, no, he does not want to put clothes on. Thank you very much.
Holmes and Yo-Yo, by the way, was the name of the series.
Was it Holmes and Yo-Yo?
Yes.
That is such a very 80s or 70s title for a show.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the interactions, and it also gave Delenn a little piece of levity where she goes down to the planet and she's telling him, yeah, I'm not lost. And in your head, she's a little lost. So that was cool. And the fact that she gets to see her friend again, that's very cool, because it was sad that she was losing this mentor of hers, and to see the fact that they can talk again, even if it's not every day or have that same kind of relationship, they are still able to be in contact with each other. And I do think that Sheridan doesn't understand the ramifications of what's going on in the planet yet. I think he's read the reports. You can't get a lot from reports, and he understands there's something bigger happening in the planet. I think he needs to get brought into what does that mean. I think this was just a kind of introduction for him, and to see how, and I'm going to use the word awesome in a different sense, awesome the inside of that planet is. He says, I don't think I want to go home. He sees how beautiful it is with all the, I'm guessing it looks like a brain with all the kind of neutrons and stuff, all the flashing lights, flashing and beeping and flashing. Doing my Shatner impression from Airplane. But yeah, I enjoyed that. Oh, and I meant to say, did you know that John Schuck has a connection with Leonard Nimoy?
No.
Nope.
He and Leonard Nimoy were both married to Susan Day. No, not Susan Day.
Susan Day.
Susan Bay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he divorced Susan Bay and then she married Leonard Nimoy. But anyway, and I would say that's a step up, except John Schuck is cool too.
Yes, I was going to make that joke too, but I decided not to. So good for you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So yeah, I thought that was a really good storyline. I think it's planting that seed that we will be able to see more stuff happening, and it's putting it in our mind with this conflict, putting them together in an episode. So we think to ourselves, is that going to come in handy later? Is that going to be some kind of strategic advantage that we have over the Shadow? Because we know they're advanced and we know this planet is advanced. So is there going to be a conflict between them? Do the Shadows know about what's going on in that planet? There's lots of questions brought up in this episode. Yeah, I really appreciated that they dropped this into this storyline, because I do think it's going to have very serious ramifications down the line. And yeah, just very cool. And I love seeing Delenn again in 2 in a row. And the fact that she goes from the planet and letting Sheridan in on the planet to introducing him to this quote unquote army that can stand behind him, I thought was an interesting step, to go from introducing him to whatever's happening in the planet and then giving him these people that can stand behind him. So it looks like she's arming him with what he needs. And we can't discount that Kosh was also in that room. He's got a big part to play, I think. He, she, it, whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree with this. Now, this is slightly spoiler, so I apologize, but I think it's important to know that Draw comes back one more time, and then that actor becomes unavailable. And JMS ends up going, I can't recast this a third damn time. And this is one of the complaints that I don't know if they end up using this planet's resources as much as they planned on you.
Okay.
So yeah, that just so because I thought the same thing. Okay, hey, we've got this weapon now, and so this should be important. And so watch this and see how they work that through.
Okay.
John Shuck's still alive, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked about is both in last week and this week, we ignored a rom-com trope. Last week, Susan talked to the captain about hiding that she had this small telepath abilities. Why didn't you tell me? She explains why, and he goes, okay, that makes sense. We don't spend half the movie now then because there was a misunderstanding, they can't talk. In this case, he calls Garibaldi. You've been knowing this? Why wouldn't you tell me? Because I made a promise to a friend. Okay. Like, I think that makes sense because he had said once before he had told John that I'm not going to break my trust because then you can't trust me if you tell me something I can't repeat.
Right.
I love the fact that Sheridan is smart enough to connect those, like, why didn't you tell me? I made a promise to a friend. Okay, I'm going to ignore the fact that I haven't known this because I didn't need to know it till now. And then we do that. So I was very happy with that we didn't get fake.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that's really important because we did lay that down, that he has reassured Sheridan, I'm not going to betray confidences.
Yeah.
And then that is backed up here.
Yeah. Is there anything else about this? He does give a wonderful, JMS loves to write speeches, and we got 2 of them. And the second one was that for the last year, things haven't exactly been going our way. I started to wonder if it would ever get better. I think it just did. Tell the other Rangers, the ambassadors, everyone in this army of light that Babylon 5 stands with you. Tell them that this is the place. We will deliver notice to the parliaments of Conquer that a line has been drawn against the darkness, and we will hold that line no matter the cost. I just love that. I love it has the echoes of we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Don't ask not what your country could do for you, what you can do for your country. Churchill, we will not go. It is absolutely beautiful, and I think your man Bruce just killed it doing that.
So good. He's so good in this. Why did I not watch this the first time around? I don't get it because I'm such a Bruce fangirl. But again, there were a lot of things to watch then at that point.
But I really do think that I love Michael O'Hare. I think that I'm excited. It's not spoiler. He does come back, but just I love watching Bruce and him interact with everyone in just so many ways.
Can we get him on the podcast, please?
Boy, that would be great. Yes. Any other things we should talk about? That this is, I agree, by the way, an absolutely amazing episode.
Yeah, it's just, I'll just reiterate that for most series, this would be a very unusual move to have such a major event happen so early in the run. Usually this would be something that you would see like in the 4th or 5th season of a 5-season show. I guess the thing that's working for it is that we know that there's a bigger war coming. So this is like the Helm's Deep to the Battle of the Ivory City. Yeah.
And it is interesting, the idea that these characters, we've ended this war. Jakar is now citizen Jakar. He is not ambassador Jakar. They were able to fool a little bit of Londo, take a little bit because Londo is, no, he must do this. It's part of the agreement. And they're like, hey, screw you. We didn't sign the agreement. Earth didn't sign the agreement. The Mabari go, we didn't sign it. And that was the only thing, I guess, that from Londo's that didn't go his way on this thing.
I think a lot of things didn't go his way, but he doesn't know it yet.
Yeah. Yes. And I also think it is a little bit aware, and I think part of that is Veer, that this is this me. Have I made the bet? Have I made a deal with the devil? And oh, what have I gone too far? And he tells that with his friend dying when telling Veer, I've gone too far. I do like that he brought up with Rifa, this has already cost me one good friend. And Rifa's, yeah,
Who cares?
well, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, right?
Yep.
He is just totally.
I mean, Rifa was the architect behind that.
Exactly.
So, of course, he doesn't care. He wanted that guy dead.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else we need to talk about?
No, I would just reiterate that this is a watershed moment for the series because the dynamic of everything is going to change going forward. And I hope I still feel the same way after watching the next episode that Jesse's got us all excited about seeing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. So you guys have already shared. So yeah, I give this 10 out of 10 looking on destruction scenes. This is an absolutely wonderful episode. It ties together some great storylines, and it sets up that the next conflict is the armies of light against the armies of darkness. And I think that's when your villain is called the Shadows, that makes sense that you are the light against darkness. Yeah, this is just a absolutely amazing episode.
Yeah.
Do you have a qualifier? I do. I have 10 amazing graphics when it comes to shadow ships. I think the graphics on those is really good.
Yeah.
I'd say 10 out of 10 lights in the darkness.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I will do 10 out of 10 sniffing candles. One of the things that JMS has said is they always try to have a candle being snuffed out when there's going to be death. And I thought that scene with Andreas reaching down, knowing this is very much another point. I don't know if you noticed, if it is worth watching the seat on the council where the Merkits is empty. You can see that twice when you walk by. They have the little sign of who they are, and that seat is empty.
So those are the people that were exterminated by that plague. Okay.
By the plague, yes. And so, yes, they're.
So they have a memorial seat for him. That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very nice.
Yeah. All right. Karen, any feedback?
No.
Did we get feedback?
How could there be?
Yes, we did. I just forwarded you.
Oh, I see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got Texas on the shock. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So Texas on the shock says, were you expecting this? Were you expecting the return of the bombastic drawl? Were you expecting him to name drop? Why am I not able to say this?
Name drop.
Zathras.
Thank you.
Zathras.
No, not Zathras. It's drop that I couldn't say. Were you expecting him to name drop Zathras? Were you expecting the war to suddenly come to an end, especially the way it did?
No.
No. To all of those, no.
Yeah.
Some have compared Lord Rifa's reasoning to the thinking that led to the dropping of the bomb on Japan. It will shorten the war. It will save lives. The difference, I think, is that Rifa doesn't just want to end the war. He wants to use the mass drivers. He wants to pound the Narns into submission, and he wants to revel in their destruction. It also highlights the difference between Londo and Rifa. Londo protests the use of mass drivers, though he ultimately capitulates to Rifa's stated reasons. But you can tell he knows this is wrong, which just makes it more tragic to me. From a directorial perspective, this is a very atmospheric episode, especially toward the end. The sequence of empty corridors with security and riot gear, while there's a running commentary from ISN, which just underscores the tension. What? Did you guys have anything to say? No? Okay.
No.
I also like how in the scene where G'Kar comes to ask for sanctuary, G'Kar is shrouded in darkness while Sheridan is illuminated. And the council scene, of course, is very charged as Londo and Sheridan with the Len lock horns. Sheridan seems absolutely delighted after Londo lists the terms of surrender to deny him at least one thing. Sorry, not sorry, Londo, but you're not getting Jakar. And then Andreas Katsoulis just steals the show with that speech. This becomes a very dark episode, but in the darkest night, the light shines brightest. And we see that light start to gather around Sheridan as he takes command of the Rangers. That's all for now. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off. Texas says, Intilza Veni in Valen's name. I hope I pronounced that. Okay.
That was a great letter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We don't have any YouTube because we haven't had another episode. So we'll catch up next time. So we have 2 episodes left of the season.
Wow.
How are you feeling?
Anxious.
Yep. Excited.
Very interested in watching it.
Yep.
Today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And probably more than once, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And can I just say, I love, again, we've talked about how much we love the storytelling when it's really good like this. And I think this episode had a lot of hidden subtext in it that I think I'm going to want to go back to this and several other episodes to get a little bit more of that hidden subtext. I think there's a lot of stuff in this episode like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I always find interesting is every season is about a year. So the next 2 episodes happen in December. If you remember the first season, they were going to celebrate New Year's Eve. And so this is every season is about a year. You notice John says it's been a rough year. So he'd been roughly in the station for about a year. So yeah, next week, the episode is Comes the Inquisitor. Kosh tests Delen's allegiance while Jakar attempts to bring his people together on Babylon 5.
So does that mean that the series, okay, this might be giving away something, but does that mean that the series as a whole is over 5 years?
Sort of.
It's time jump.
There is a if you're a rookie and you don't want to know anything at all, skip ahead 2 minutes. I don't think this is spoilery. At the end of season 4, they were not sure they were going to get renewed. So JMS filmed the final episode called Sleeping in Light, and he filmed at the end of the 4th season. Then TNT picked them up, and then so they filmed all of season 5, and then he inserted that episode that had been from before as the final episode because he had a ending he wanted to cover.
Okay. So, and then we get another season after that. Is that? No.
That's
yeah. So they cut it. They filmed it at the end of 4, but they don't show it till the end of 5.
Okay.
And then before I watched the show, I was at a convention and Mirren Ferrin said, "We now know how it ends, but we can't tell you. But we are getting another season." So yeah. So there we go.
That's rude. That's rude of her.
Yeah. It was very great. All right, Karen. If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I'm at Eliveria on the Twitter machine, and there's a link in my bio to my blog, alliesstuff.com, at which you can find a bunch of other links and some interesting stuff.
And Lou, what do you got going on over at Lou's Reviews?
We've got the Babylon 5 podcast. We've got the writer interview podcast. We've got the Stephen King podcast and the JKLM media podcast where we do one-offs of limited run series or books or movies or music.
I had to explain to my husband what it meant, JKL media. He didn't get it. And I'm like, Jesse, Karen, Lou, media. Goes in.
Yeah. And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. As of this recording, we just finished our 1000th episode of Set Lusting Bruce. I had a week of episodes that I send out. One of them, 3 episodes, was either incredibly boring to my audience or incredibly fun. We took 256 Bruce songs and over the course of 3 episodes got it down to 1. What is the best Bruce Springsteen song? Surprisingly, it was Racing in the Street is what ended up being at the top of our discussion. Not Thunder Road, not Born to Run, not The River, not Darkness on the Edge of Town. It was Racing in the Street. And it's fun how we got there.
Wow.
Coming up, we're going to be talking the Tragically Hip. And we also are debating on when we can find time to talk 12 Monkeys, though I don't know how we're going to do that, but we all are eager to get back to I've not seen any of it. Both of them have seen just a little bit of it, and we're trying to figure out when we can do to go through it and talk.
We just want to talk is all. We just want to talk.
Exactly. We just have a talk. Yes.
Did our Western Star episode go up?
Yes, it did. Yes. And I got no feedback. None whatsoever. Yeah. Sorry. So it went out. Yeah. Everyone seemed to. No one yelled at us because we didn't like it. So yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
You guys.
Hey, now there were parts of it you liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I said I didn't love it. Maybe I should say that.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yes.
It was okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Karen. We will be back next week for a come down episode. We will, but for then, take care, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
And thank you, Jesse. And see.
No.